The argument from religious experience. Perhaps the least popular and least persuasive argument which is commonly given for the existence of God is the argument from religious experience. I think, though, that the argument from religious experience is a good argument in the sense that it makes the existence of God with respect to epistemic probability, it makes that existence more likely than not. And that is enough for a successful piece of natural theology. And this argument can be a good ingredient in the context of a cumulative case for the existence of God. Here is the argument proper. Premise 1. Many people sincerely report that they have had many experiences, or at any rate an experience, of meta-natural reality. Premise 2. These people are obviously not lying, else they wouldn't be sincere. Moreover, they are not mistaken in the report either. 3. In that case, there has been at least one experience by at least one person of metanatural reality. In other words, at least one supernatural being really exists. Number 4, the immediate corollary of 3 is that God exists. The conclusion number 5, therefore, God exists. So the argument, more simply, is that the experience of God has actually happened, and this presupposes there is a God. So if we can experience God, then there is a God, and we have experienced God. Somebody has, at least. The second part of premise 2 is the most controversial, which is that the people who report experiencing God are unmistaken. This argument thus boils down to justifying the claim that at least one person throughout all of history has not been mistaken in their sincere belief that they have had some sort of supernatural experience. I shall consider the possible explanations of this sincere belief in one's putative supernatural experience. The livest options, it seems to me, are as follows. First, the mystic in question actually was having a supernatural experience. That's the first possible explanation, the first possibility. Number 2, the said mystic was in great fear of the uncertainties of life and created a deity or deities in his or her mind by way of wishful thinking. So that's the next alternative of why people think that they have experienced the divine. The third possibility, primitive mankind was naive and wanted explanations for various natural phenomena. He came up with the most plausible explanations he could think of in the form of myths which he told. The fourth possibility, biologically speaking, brains that were wired with the useful fiction of religion were selected for over against brains that were not so wired. There was doubtless some survival value in the religiously inclined brain. And the fifth and final possibility that we're going to consider is that the haves invented the gods as a power grab to control the have-nots. So genuine religious experience, wishful thinking, mythos, evolution, and will to power. Those are the 5 main possibilities, though perhaps these do not exhaust all of the possibilities that we could come up with. If the first possibility is correct, then the argument from religious experience goes through and we can all go home. And that was that the claim that they are having an authentic religious experience is correct. They are correct in what they're claiming. Excuse me. They are not mistaken in their interpretation of their experience. So if that is the correct alternative, the correct possibility, then the argument from religious experience goes through. And I will now explain why the 4 other possibilities are not very plausible. And that shall make the first possibility more plausibly correct than the others. So if if people are correct when they say they've had these supernatural experiences, then premise 2 is correct and the argument as a whole is successful. So now we're going to see why premise 2 is more plausibly correct than not. Than not correct. All right, projection, wish fulfillment. Is this plausible? What I want to ask is, what is the wish to be fulfilled? Well, let me back up and specify. I'm going through the different possibilities now, so I'm looking at the second possibility, which is that we saw things in the world, we were scared, we didn't know what the future holds, so we want there to be a God, so we imagine that we have experiences of that God. Alright, projection, wish fulfillment. Is this plausible? What I want to ask is, what is the wish to be fulfilled under this possibility? It is that fear and uncertainty are eliminated, the fears and uncertainties of life. The problem is that the creation of deities often has the opposite effect. In the myriad gods of ancient paganism, there was a great deal of whim or capriciousness and wickedness. How do you know when this god or that has had enough animal sacrifices? How do you know when this god or that has had enough human sacrifices? And the threat of being sacrificed as a human certainly would be tend to be more fearful than comforting. How do you know when this god or that is about to smite you for some whimsical, capricious reason? Finally, how do you know that when you are being totally pleasing and obedient to God A, that you are not enraging the divine enemy of God A, namely God B? So, you may be pleasing to one God, and by being pleasing to one God, you are unpleasing to another. The answer to each of these rhetorical questions is obvious. The answer does not make possibility 2 absolutely impossible, but it does make it more or less implausible. So the idea of creating gods to comfort oneself seems to have the opposite effect, to discomfort oneself, make one even more uncomfortable. And the third possibility is that primitive mankind was naive and wanted explanations for various natural phenomena, so he came up with the most plausible explanations he could think of by creating myths. So the myth was the best he could do in his circumstances. So we'll address that third possibility in the video number 2. Thank you.